Hey guys, Fox here, and today it's time to look at week 4 of the 2024 UFL season and see how the games went, how the attendance was, and how the TV ratings were. Now, yes, originally I thought this video was going to come out on Wednesday, and it looks like other people thought so too, but we ended up getting the TV ratings today. Usually when there's a holiday like Easter, it gets pushed back a day. I guess not anymore. So without further ado, let's just get right on into this with the Showboats Panthers. This was bad. This was a total blowout. This is really the biggest destruction we've seen since the first 2 weeks of the season, because even the final score doesn't indicate how lopsided this game was. The one touchdown Memphis scored came after the Panthers were punting. The center missed the punter on the snap, so they ended up losing 5 yards on the punt, or gained 2 or something. Then got a DPI penalty, which gave them another 15 yards, meaning that Memphis basically started their drive off at the 6-yard line. So it doesn't even really count. Memphis, man, it was just bad. Now look, Bryce Perkins played incredibly, not well enough to be the full-time starter because, according to a recent James Larson tweet, Nolan, now that Etling is back, is still planning on potentially using both quarterbacks, so I guess we're not done with that, even though Perkins has been the MVP of the league through 4 weeks. Perkins, though, was incredible, right? 15 and 22 for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, right? I've always talked about completions per yards. That's how I view it. I'm not a biggest fan of yards per pass. It is great for a season, but completion is the one that really matters to me in terms of game by game. He had over 10 yards per completion, which is very good. So very solid game from Perkins. On the ground, even though they did benefit a bit from long yardage, overall we saw that Perkins running the ball ended up being great for the other running backs. Tawa and McCreary both had very solid games. We all kind of expected Sheridan to have a really solid game after that breakout run last week, or 2 weeks ago I should say at this point. But no, McCreary and Tawa ended up being really solid in this game. As an overall running game performance, this is one of the most consistent on the season. As we did see DC, which we'll get to later, have a good running game performance in terms of total yardage, but that was really just their quarterback doing everything. As an overall ground game, this was a very solid time for Michigan. As for the Showboats, I mean, it is what it is, right? Deneric Prince did what he could. Capote did basically nothing. It's rough. The 2-quarterback system, it's what I feared heading into the season. I said in multiple videos that they don't have a great quarterback room. Just because you have guys that have played spring football isn't great. And this is coming from the guy who's always valued guys who we've seen play over newcomers. The difference is, when it comes to guys who we know aren't that elite or great tier of player, having them as your consistent starter isn't a good thing. If a player is great at the spring football level, I would rather have him than a highly touted newcomer, because the newcomer might not work out. But when you have a guy like T. Will or EJ Perry, they're just okay starters. The decision to go with them as the quarterbacks this season has proven to be the biggest issue with Memphis, aside from them not getting turnovers. Overall, this was a bad loss for Memphis in Michigan. Great game by them. Second game was the Renegades Battlehawks. It's a weird one. So Manny Wilkins is on IR. He basically did, not the first play, but about the third or fourth play of the game, he was doing a QB draw. He stepped back and then he went to push up, and when he, pushed up to run, obviously, he just, completely blew out his leg. Fumbled the ball, got hurt in that play, and the Renegades scored a touchdown on it. The fact is, if you eliminate the 2 touchdowns the Renegades got at the beginning of the game, because, again, that's not a real touchdown. That is a player literally, tearing his Achilles, or we don't know for sure what it is. I believe it's still now, but yeah, the ruptured his Achilles towards ACL or something. That was a touchdown, and a pick 6 was a touchdown. If you were to do the, what-if scenario, kind of like how we did for the Renegades against the Stallions, we do it for the Battlehawks actually beat the Renegades 15-14 because of the fact that the Renegades got 2 on both their attempts that they didn't deserve touchdowns on. Of course, the first one, which, again, it was a fumble recovery touchdown on a player literally getting a season-ending injury, and a pick 6. Even then, the fact that St. Louis got to a legit shot to win the game at the end is bad for Arlington. People have put Arlington at number 1 in their power rankings, and it's kind of undeserved. The fact is, this was a very unimpressive win by Arlington because Max Duggan was not good. His stats are actually far better than he played. He played worse than these stats show, minus the second interception, which, no, still pretty bad. Look, I can try to be nice to him. He was bad. People are trying to act like he was just new, was just something. Jalen McClendon came in for the Roughnecks and looked incredible. Duggan came in and looked really bad. He was able to run the ball well, not as well as Manny, but again, that's very hard to do. Biggest issue is coaching. The very end of the game, they had 3 plays at the goal line, technically 4, but like within 6 yards of the end zone, and they did one run with Sailors, then they did 3 straight plays where he never got the ball. He's your best player on offense, and you never used him. That's terrible coaching, terrible play calling by the Battlehawks. As for the Renegades, Perez had another solid game, nowhere near as good as last year, but not terrible. Their ground game, still awful. Daddy Hunter wasn't all that great. He was better than we've seen in the past, but still not great. Kalen, man, didn't really do anything either. Overall, the big thing is Arlington was able to get a ton of sacks. They got 6 sacks on the Battlehawks. Though overall, this was not an impressive win by Arlington, and this was a very poor game by St. Louis. As for a game, though, it was a very interesting watch. That was this one. Now, the second to last game was the Stallions Roughnecks. This game was pretty similar to what I expected. This one and the last game both went kind of expected. I expected this one to be a closer game than a lot of people thought, though not for the reasons everybody thought. So what ended up happening is Nolan Henderson was playing really well, and he got hurt almost pretty quick. Not as quick as Manny, but very quick. Jalen McClendon came in and had one of the best quarterback performances of the season. Now, the interception was at the very end of the game when they were trying to do a drive, and this wasn't like the Max Duggan or, the Jordan Teamu end of game where they were at the goal line. This was basically early on, and they were driving through the interception, so it's still a very bad interception, but like with Manny's last year against the Renegades, it's harder to view when he's trying to play hero ball because they kind of have to, that it's on him. If you eliminate that interception, he had an incredible day when it comes to the fact that he had like a 70 completion percentage, over 10 yards of completion, very solid, and was even the leading rusher despite the fact that White got like twice as many carries as him. Again, ground game has been really weak this season. Though the Stallions, CJ Maribel had a better day than we've seen in the past from most players. Even without the big rush, he still averaged over 3 yards a carry, which isn't insane, but considering this season, it's actually pretty good. Matt Corral did get hurt. We'll see exactly how bad it is this year or this week. He wasn't put on IR, but we don't know exactly how healthy he is, so got to kind of wait for that one. As for Cookies, came in, made one big throw, made a block, and then that was pretty much it. He didn't really do anything. Overall, very close game. The Stallions, it's weird how other people are putting them at number 1, despite the fact that they were the same people trashing the Roughnecks even when they won. Just thought I'd say that, but this was a game. It was a very close game, but the best game of the week was the DC San Antonio game, which San Antonio pulled off the upset. I predicted this one. I called that San Antonio was going to get the upset. Originally, when I was on XFL Jim's show, Spring into Football, I was picking the Defenders, and I was like, I did the XFL Jim show first, and I was, DC, then I was like, in the Spring into Football, maybe San Antonio gets it, and then I was like, yeah, they're going to get it, and they pulled it off. Now, it's important to note this. I've seen some people say that the yards argument isn't, worth it, and it is. The fact is DC played better most of the game. The issue was penalties, right? The overall play was good, but the penalties are what really hurt DC. Teamu had his best game of the season statistically, and even then this still wasn't a great game by him. There's a lot of times where receivers had to make really incredible catches. There was a couple of good throws. I think some people are underselling him. There was a couple of very solid throws. But overall, for this being his best game of the season, it was basically a great half. He had a great first half, the second half, not as much. On the ground, though, credit to him. I never would have expected this to come from Teamu. He had 10 carries for 74 yards. He didn't even have one super long rush. He basically was averaging damn near 7 yards a carry. When your long is only 12, yeah, you were legitimately running well almost every time. Abram Smith, man, it's too early. It's still a bit too early to say washed, but man, he still has not had a single good game. His long was a 16-yard long, and even with that, he barely averaged 3 yards a carry. You eliminate that 16-yard rush, you're talking about 25 yards, basically, on 12 carries. I mean, that's awful. As for the Brahmas, the offense, it's still not great, but it's efficient, right? I talked about in the power rankings, they do not turn the ball over. Kellen Mond had another very solid day. Not a great day, not an earth-shattering day, but, 70 completion percentage, almost 10 yards of completion, no picks, very solid. Ground game, much better than it's been. Still not incredible, but McFarland still had, a solid couple of rushes. Overall, though, DC won in a lot of statistical categories, but the ones that really mattered, the red zone, one team was 3 of 3, one of them was 1 of 3. That's going to hurt you. One team had only 7 penalties, and that was the team that was the most penalized team in the league, and the other team had 13. So when that happens, you're kind of screwing yourself. San Antonio, big win for them. As for the attendance, well, of course, Cam Ward was in attendance for one of the games. I know I was like, wow, really? Cam Ward's there? It was kind of shocking to see. Love to see that. But as for the overall attendance this week, it was kind of expected. Yes, it's Easter weekend. Yes, it's WrestleMania weekend. Yes, the NBA and NHL playoffs started this weekend. Attendance was, That's the truth. It was Pretty much every number was what I expected, except Arlington. Honestly, Arlington's was the most surprising number. I was expecting them to go down because of everything going on. They still managed to basically hit what they did last week. In fact, they were actually a bit better than last week. So, or not last week, but last time they were there by like literally 30. So I was actually impressed by Arlington. Michigan, not shocked at all. I know some people were upset about it. The fact is, it was a third straight home game. That's one big blow. It was another Friday night game, another big blow. And Memphis, which just seemed to be the team that just drags everything down. So, not really shocked at the attendance. DC's, solid number. It was higher than their first game, not as good as their second one. Still a very solid number, very impressive. Basically, Arlington and DC were solid numbers. They weren't like, earth-shattering, oh my god, that's incredible, but they were okay. Houston, it's just rough. Yes, I know people are going to try and use the excuses of how they had so many home games going on at the same time, which, again, is true. But the fact is, just like Memphis, you should not be seeing Vegas Vipers numbers of attendance in this league. That's a bad number. Nowhere near as bad as Memphis, but still a bad number. Now, comparing them to last season, again with Arlington's average was heavily inflated by like their 14K week one game, so very solid compared to last year. Michigan's obviously much better than last year's overall average. DC's still less than the average they had last season, but this season still a solid number. And Houston, when you're going less than Houston's attendance last year and their excuse was not being in, TDECU, it's rough. So that's the attendance. TV ratings. Now, I'm not even showing the rest of this season's ratings. Why? Because I'm not even kidding. They're basically identical to this. Yes, Easter weekend usually hurts TV ratings, especially on Sunday and the other stuff. So in that aspect, I do get what people are saying. Overall, again, very okay TV ratings. Nothing to write home about. Nothing to say, oh my god, that's terrible. Would I have liked to see the Fox games that were on the weekend do better? Yes. Would I have liked to see Michigan-Memphis do better now there's no March Madness or really anything, Masters? Yes. Again, it's this time of year you do this. No matter when you have a spring league, even people who say February is a good start time, remember, if you're going to start in February, you're going to have to start like the end of the February because of the NFL's eventual expansion. And then when that happens, expansion of the season, 18 games. And when that inevitably happens, you're going to go against March Madness. The fact is, there's no good time to start a spring football season when it comes to competition. But this week, it's like, it's good that they're staying the same. That's something that you always fear with spring football's numbers going down. Of course, you look at last season's. ABC was solid the whole year. ESPN was roughly solid the whole year. Fox ended up going down a bit. You saw that great week one numbers. Then the next few weeks, it was still hovering around 1 million. Then it was hovering about 800K. So in that aspect, yes, it's great these numbers are staying the same. But we still don't have a game that hit 1 mil as an overall average viewership. The Fox Friday Night Football games have still not breached 700K. So there's a couple of things that are definitely still sad to see. It's great seeing primetime games on the weekend, but when you're head-to-head against like so many other things, it hurts. One benefit, though, is, of course, that this was the weakest WrestleMania in a while, so I wouldn't be shocked if some people ended up watching or going to the UFL game. I think we can all agree, especially how good those two games were. It was better than WrestleMania. But you also had, a signature golf event. You had playoffs going on. But overall, with attendance and TV ratings, were just kind of meh. Weren't bad, weren't good. Which I guess for Easter Sunday weekend, you could argue is good. But I'm going to call it okay for both of them. Would have liked to see them be better, but they could have been worse. Overall, though, it's solid that we're seeing a lot of stability this season. Apologies for that. Not going to edit that. I'm not going to be one of those guys. But it's good to see some stability overall in terms of the ratings and stuff. It's just you would wish we would see more improvement. Who knows? Maybe we'll see something happen this week with, no Easter Sunday and all that. But we'll see. Overall, this has been ZomFox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as I upload any videos. Again, next weekend, or this upcoming weekend, I'll be streaming the Friday Night Football game, as well as the first Tank Bowl of the season. San Antonio plays Houston. Yes, I know San Antonio's looked really good, but we are at the point in the season where if you're 1-3 against a 1-3 team, it is a Tank Bowl. So we do have that coming up this weekend. So be looking for those two live streams, my Players of the Week video, or short tomorrow, my game picks on Friday. I'm not planning on doing a weekly video this week just because, the last 2 weeks has been a ton of work, doing many more videos than I expected, especially 2 weeks ago when I basically did daily uploads and then even did a double upload, I'm pretty sure, at one point. And then last week, doing 2 shows and still doing multiple videos. I'm going to try and take a little bit of a time off in regards to the Wednesday, Thursday video. Again, if news comes out, I will do a video on it. So make sure you're subscribed with the bell turned on. Think about becoming a community member for 99 cents a month. You get an exclusive video every month as well as a bunch of other benefits. And as always, guys, have a great night.